Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest in my constructed video series. This is Brian Kibler with StarCityGames.com. And as you can see on your screen, we're going to be playing a bit of Modern today. I'm going to be playing the Wilt Leaf Liege deck that let's get this thing sorted. I actually thought I had sorted it. It didn't work. That I played in the Pro Tour just last weekend. I guess really 2 weeks ago by the time you actually see this. So anyway, this is the green-white sort of basically green-white. It's Abzan technically, it does have black in it, but the core is it's a green-white aggro deck. And I wrote about this deck in my article last week, so you haven't read that yet. You should check it out. This is actually a modified version for the sort of post-Pro Tour metagame. At the Pro Tour, I largely built the deck because I felt like Abzan would be the most popular opposing's deck. And then I felt like Burn was likely to be a very popular deck as well. And turned out that the two of those combined were 40% of the field. So sort of metagame call was spot on, and the deck ultimately performed very well, bringing Jacob Wilson to the top 8 and posting really good records for pretty much everyone who played it. I think we had around a 70% win rate with the deck, which is very good for any constructed deck in a Pro Tour level of competition metagame. So the idea is that basically you want to be able to, because the field is so wide open in a lot of cases, it is built to beat that sort of specific metagame that we were targeting, but in a wider open metagame, I generally like to be playing an aggressive strategy, a deck that is actually able to pressure my opponent. I'm not a huge fan of the sort of standard green black jund style decks that are basically just removal spells and Tarmogoyfs and discard. Because I actually think that those are frequently going to match up, despite the fact that discard is generally going to be good against a lot of things. People are building their decks to beat that. They're building decks that they want to beat that style of deck, and they are able to present threats that are difficult for you to deal with. They're able to build their deck in such a way that they exploit some of the weaknesses of your deck, and that's exactly what we did, was build the deck to exploit the weaknesses of the junk style decks. And that really is that they're very reliant on Liliana and discard for their disruption to be able to deal with a lot of what the opponent's doing early. And this entire deck is great against those. You have Voice of Resurgence and Lingering Souls that are great against the sacrifice ability of Liliana, and then you have Wilt Leaf Liege, Loxodon Spider, and Lingering Souls again. They're all very good against the discard ability of Liliana or the discard effects of Thoughtseize, Inquisition. So structurally, you're just really well positioned to deal with a lot of the best cards in the opposing green-black decks. You also have the tools to play a much better sort of attrition-based game than they do because you're a Gavany Township deck. You are able to use your mana creatures to get ahead on the board while they're trying to react to what you're doing, and then ultimately, once you're sort of exchanging resources, they're like, okay, use this to kill this, use this to kill this. You're able to use whatever sort of stragglers survive to generate a very powerful army with Township and Wilt Leaf Liege sort of supporting, whether you're Lingering Souls or even just your mana creatures or the tokens from Voice of Resurgence. So there's a lot of tools in the deck that allow you to sort of win those attrition-based games. The sideboard here is focused on shoring up some of the weaker matchups. That's generally what sideboards are for. Modern is a format where sideboards are very, very important, and this sideboard is built targeting what I anticipate the sort of metagame to shift to be after the Pro Tour. I'm experimenting with a couple of cards here that I haven't actually really tried. For instance, Sorin. Sorin was a card that I actually strongly considered playing in the deck leading up to the Pro Tour, and ultimately chose not to. But I think it's a very good card in both the sort of green-white junk style mirror, as well as potentially against burn decks. Burn, obviously, they're just trying to race you. They need to have the ability to actually close out games, and the +1 ability on Sorin of, all your guys gain lifelink can make that very difficult if they don't have Skullcrack, and sometimes they need to use their Skullcracks to deal with just, Finks or Rhino. It's possible that Sorin at 4 is too expensive, but it has a lot of overlap value because I think the effect is also very good against other green-white decks where you can make a 2/2 flyer, and the lifelink ability is also pretty relevant there because sometimes those games do come down to race situations. I also am playing 2 copies of Zealous Persecution, which is different from my Pro Tour deck. I had 1 copy there. I think that both the popularity of this style of deck is likely to increase. There'll be a lot of Lingering Souls out there. It's also a very good card against against Infect. It's a very good card against like token decks. I know that there were a couple of those that were actually quite popular or did reasonably well at the Pro Tour, played by Martin Juza and that sort of crowd. And it's also strong against Affinity. You're able to kill a lot of their, like one creatures that they haven't, sort of gotten big yet. I had Fracturing Gust at the Pro Tour against both Affinity and against Boggles. Boggles didn't really show up in force, and I decided that I'd rather have a card like Persecution, just play the one Stony Silence that is sort of has a lot more overlap value in a number of other matchups. It's quite good against Infect, because Infect, in a lot of cases, they have like a Noble Hierarch and another 1/1, and being able to Persecution them away is extremely valuable. So I also have one copy of Stony Silence. We played. Some people played one copy at the Pro Tour. I did not play, or rather Leyline. Leyline is obviously very powerful against burn because they can't actually burn you out if it's in play, and it can have value against decks like Storm or Scapeshift. It's a card that I don't think that you want to have a bunch of because it's obviously in multiples it's totally useless, and I think that it is doesn't necessarily mesh with your sort of proactive plan in most cases. But I think that having a single copy, because it can just win games independently, is, has some value. I have 2 copies of Choke. I didn't play Choke in the Pro Tour, but I think that it is one of the best options against Splinter Twin. Given that Splinter Twin won the Pro Tour, I really like the option of having Choke in my sideboard to be able to fight either plan they go with. Choke is very good against them, whether they're on the control plan or the combo plan after sideboarding. It enables you to have an excellent sideboard card, depending on no matter what direction they go. So, and then 1 copy of Feed the Clan. I think this is a obviously very powerful anti-burn card. It's possible that I'd rather have something like a Core Firewalker, but right now I'm trying the Feed the Clan because I think that having a way to gain life as an instant can really mess up the planning of the burn decks. And obviously, if you actually have Ferocious, which this deck can do very easily, gaining 10 life is almost impossible for them to beat. Chalice is another card that I had at the Pro Tour, and I continue to have as sort of an overlap card. I don't think it's the best card in a lot of matchups, but I think it's very strong against both Infect and Burn and Storm. I'm not playing Rule of Law. I had 1 copy of it at the Pro Tour. I think that Rule of Law is, it's the best card against some decks. Like, it's the best card against Storm. It's very good against Living End. I don't expect those decks to be particularly popular, and I think that having a card that's still good against those decks and also has value elsewhere, like against Burn or Infect, where you can shut down a number of their cheap spells, has a lot of value. So anyway, this is what we're going to be playing, and we're going to jump into some cues and see how we do. So let's go.